Natural selection has a structural framework that you always want to use on the iGCSE, and regardless of what the actual question is about, this will you'll get several points by using this framework, but you'll also want to make sure that you are adjusting the framework for the specific question, all right? And this works whether you're talking about, I don't know, coat color in animals or resistance, antibiotic resistance in bacteria or anything like that, all right? The first part of any question about natural selection is that the idea that in all populations, there's mutations, there are random mutations that lead to genetic variation. Okay, so in a population, whether that's bacteria, animals, humans, fungus, whatever, okay, there's always going to be some genetic variation. There is genetic, variation due to random mutations. Yes, remember I said that most mutations in another video, I said that most mutations are detrimental, but some of them have no benefit, and some of them don't have any benefit until a selection pressure is applied. So that's the idea. You always have genetic variations due to random mutations. All right. Then what happens is a selection pressure is introduced. All right. So for bacteria, this would be antibiotics. Maybe we did a question about giraffes, right? The idea is that like food was scarce, and so a giraffe with a longer neck was born. That would be the genetic variation. And the selection pressure was low food availability, right? So, a selection pressure is applied, and I say applied, it's not a conscious thing, but there's maybe a change in the environment or something that change in the environment. Sorry, not paying attention. A selection pressure favors one genetic variation or one allele, okay? And that means that individuals with that allele, again, doesn't matter whether we're talking about bacteria or people or animals or fungus or plants or whatever, individuals with that allele, the favored allele, they are more likely, and this is key, more likely to survive. They are more likely, if they're more likely to survive, they're more likely to reproduce. And then they're more likely to pass on that advantageous allele. All right. And so then over time, over several generations, that allele will become more common in the population. The allele. This is why antibiotic resistance is a thing. Okay, all it takes is one bacteria to be resistant to that streptomycin you took. And then when you take the streptomycin, it kills all the other bacteria, but it doesn't kill the one that was resistant. And then that one that was resistant suddenly has lots of food around and no competition. And so it will begin to reproduce, and that allele of resistance will get passed on to all of its offspring. And so over time, you're going to have a population of bacteria where the resistance to streptomycin is quite common. All right, so this is your framework. Oops, sorry. There we go. This is your framework, all right? But what you need to make sure you can do is apply this information to specific instances. So for example, this in step number 2, where it says a selection pressure or change environment favors one allele. What you need to do when you are actually writing this out is talk about what is the selection pressure and how does it cause that allele to be favored, right? So in the example of the giraffe that I gave, there's not a lot of food around. So why does having a longer neck allow the giraffe to survive? Like, who cares? So you would have to say the giraffe with the longer neck can reach food that other giraffes couldn't. Therefore, it was more likely to survive, reproduce, and pass on that allele. Its offspring also had longer necks. They all could reach that food too. Therefore, over time, the allele for a long neck became more common in the population. So the idea is that this part here, you need to be specific on what is the selection pressure and how does the allele that is selected for benefit from that selection pressure? How does it survive better? All right. Now, the keywords that you don't want to change are genetic variation, mutation, survive, reproduce, and pass on the allele. Don't say pass on their genes. The idea is that they're passing on that specific variation of a gene, the allele, and that's the important part. Okay, so the stuff in purple that I've underlined, really don't mess with the wording on that. The stuff in blue, that's where you want to be more specific with the question, depending on the question. Sorry.